December 21, 1944, near Bastogne, Belgium. The wind cut through the canvas walls of the command tent as if it wanted to join the war itself. Outside, exhausted American soldiers stamped snow from their boots. Ambulances crawled through frozen mud. Radios crackled with broken reports. Somewhere in the distance, artillery rolled across the Ardennes like distant thunder. Inside the headquarters, a large battle map covered nearly an entire wall. Colored pins marked American units. Blue grease pencil lines showed roads. Red arrows pointed toward German positions. No one spoke above a whisper. Something was wrong. A courier had just arrived from the front carrying reports that did not match the map everyone had been studying for the last hour. Captain Louis Harlan frowned. That can't be right. Major Richard Keane folded his arms. It has to be. 3 different patrols confirmed it. Another silence settled over the room. Around the edge of the tent stood clerks, signal operators, junior officers, and one young corporal whose job was simply to update maps as fresh reconnaissance arrived. Corporal Daniel Mercer. 23 years old. Former surveyor from Ohio. Quiet. Almost invisible. He stared at the map longer than anyone else. Then his face changed. Not with fear. With certainty. Mercer looked from the reconnaissance report back to the wall. His heartbeat quickened. The German armored column wasn't moving through the valley shown on the map. It couldn't. He knew why. Before the war, he had spent years surveying railroads and mountain roads. Terrain spoke to him almost like another language. The valley marked on headquarters maps had already become nearly impassable after heavy snowfall. The tanks would never choose it. They would take the higher logging road. The same road no one had marked. Mercer swallowed. He looked around the room. Everyone outranked him. Every man there had years of combat experience. He was just a corporal. He lowered his eyes. Maybe someone else would notice. Nobody did. The discussion grew louder. They'll hit the south road. No, they'll swing east. The reconnaissance plane could have been mistaken. Maps were adjusted. Pins were moved. Still, the route stayed wrong. Mercer's hands tightened around the clipboard. Sergeant Paul Donovan noticed. You got something to say, Corporal? Mercer hesitated. I might. The room barely acknowledged him. Captain Harlan waved impatiently. Go ahead. Mercer stepped toward the map. His boots suddenly sounded impossibly loud. I think this line is wrong. Several officers turned. What? Mercer pointed carefully. If German armor follows this route, they'll bottleneck here. He tapped the narrow valley. The bridges are too weak. Another tap. The grades are too steep after yesterday's snow. Silence. He drew his finger farther north. If I were commanding that column. He paused. I'd use this ridge road. Major Keane frowned. That road isn't on our operational map. It should be. The room became uncomfortable. One lieutenant shook his head. Corporal, that's General Headquarters mapping. I understand, sir. You think they all missed it? Mercer didn't answer immediately. He chose every word carefully. I think the map is older than the weather. Nobody laughed. Captain Harlan walked closer. You certain? No, sir. Another pause. But I'd bet lives on it. The words hung in the cold air. Bet lives on it. No junior enlisted man casually said something like that. The flap of the command tent opened. Conversation stopped instantly. General George S. Patton entered surrounded by aides. Snow clung to his boots. His gloves were still dusted white. Everyone snapped to attention. At ease. His voice was calm. Controlled. He removed his gloves slowly. Where are we? Captain Harlan began explaining the situation. Enemy reports. Conflicting patrols. Questions about German intentions. Finally he gestured toward Mercer. And the corporal believes the map is wrong. Every eye shifted. Mercer suddenly wished he had remained silent. Patton looked directly at him. Name. Corporal Daniel Mercer, sir. You corrected my map. No, sir. Patton raised one eyebrow. Mercer continued. I corrected what I believe is an outdated assumption. The room stayed silent. Patton walked to the wall. He studied the map. He studied Mercer. Then he asked quietly, show me. Mercer's hands trembled. He picked up a grease pencil. Every officer watched. He traced the ridge road. Marked the elevation. Explained the frozen drainage. The abandoned logging route. The hidden approaches. No one interrupted. Patton asked only one question. How do you know? Mercer answered honestly. I've spent years reading terrain, sir. Combat? No, sir. Then what? Railroad surveys. Several officers exchanged puzzled looks. Patton didn't. He kept staring at the map. Minutes passed. Nobody moved. Patton finally turned toward his intelligence officer. When was this map updated? The officer checked his notebook. 3 weeks ago, sir. And snowfall? Past 4 days. Patton nodded once. Get aerial reconnaissance over this ridge immediately. Yes, sir. Nobody could tell what Patton was thinking. Mercer felt every heartbeat. Had he embarrassed himself? Had he embarrassed the general? No one knew. The waiting became unbearable. Hours crawled past. Radio operators listened through static. Outside, snow continued falling. Drivers warmed engines. Medics carried stretchers. Inside headquarters, nobody mentioned Mercer's correction. He quietly resumed updating reports. Some officers avoided looking at him. Others whispered. Donovan leaned close. You've either saved this headquarters or ended your career. Mercer forced a weak smile. I've been wrong before. Donovan looked toward the map. I hope not today. Near midnight the radio finally came alive. Recon aircraft returning. Everyone froze. Photographs arrived first. Then observations. Then confirmation. German armor. Hundreds of vehicles. Exactly where Mercer predicted. Using the ridge road. Avoiding the valley completely. The tent erupted. Maps shifted. Orders flew. Telephone operators shouted coordinates. Artillery positions changed. Convoys redirected. Entire battalions received new instructions. Captain Harlan looked at Mercer with disbelief. My God! Major Keane removed his glasses. He was right. Patton never celebrated. He simply watched the room transform. Then he spoke. How much time did this give us? Operations answered. Roughly 8 hours, sir. Patton nodded slowly. 8 hours. His voice remained steady. That may be the difference between holding this sector and losing it. Nobody argued. Everyone understood exactly what 8 hours meant during the Battle of the Bulge. Lives. Thousands of them. The headquarters worked through the night. Engineers reinforced crossroads. Tank destroyers repositioned. Supply columns avoided ambush. Infantry dug fresh defensive lines. Snow covered everything. But beneath that white silence, an entire army quietly shifted because one corporal refused to ignore what he believed was true. Mercer never mentioned it. He simply continued updating maps. Just before dawn, Patton asked for the corporal. Mercer entered a smaller command tent. Only a handful of senior officers stood inside. No ceremony. No speeches. Patton looked at him for several seconds. "You embarrassed some people yesterday." Mercer's stomach dropped. "I'm sorry, sir." Patton shook his head. "No." Another pause. "You embarrassed assumptions." The room remained silent. Patton continued. "Do you know the difference?" "No, sir." "Assumptions kill soldiers." Mercer looked down. "Facts save them." Patton walked toward the battle map once more. "You didn't challenge rank." He pointed at the terrain. "You challenged bad information." Mercer answered softly. "I only spoke because I thought men would die." Patton nodded once. "Exactly." No one said another word. The general turned toward Colonel Edwin Wallace. "Write it." The colonel already understood. Promotion paperwork. Immediate battlefield authority. Colonel Wallace began writing. Mercer looked confused. "Sir." Patton faced him again. "This army needs men who can think under pressure." He paused. "And who possess the courage to speak when silence is easier." Patton's voice never rose. "Effective immediately." "You are Sergeant Mercer." For several seconds, nobody moved. Mercer blinked. "I, sir." Patton interrupted gently. "Don't thank me." He pointed toward the map. "Thank the soldiers who'll make it home because you opened your mouth." Word spread across headquarters before sunrise. Some refused to believe it. A corporal? Promoted overnight? For correcting a map? Others knew the truth. Not for correcting a map. For preventing disaster. Donovan found Mercer outside while fresh snow settled across parked half-tracks. He smiled. "Morning, Sergeant." Mercer laughed quietly. "It still sounds strange." Donovan shrugged. "You've earned time to get used to it." Days later, reports from frontline divisions confirmed that American defenses had been waiting exactly where the German advance appeared. Several commanders privately admitted they would have been caught completely out of position without the revised intelligence. Nobody ever knew precisely how many lives had been spared. War never counted victories that way. It counted graves. The ones that never had to be dug rarely appeared in official reports. Years after the war, officers who had served in that headquarters remembered many things. The frozen roads. The endless radio traffic. The exhaustion. Patton's relentless energy. But many remembered something smaller. A young corporal standing before a room filled with men who outranked him. His hands shaking. His voice uncertain. Yet choosing truth over comfort. Not because he wanted recognition. Because he believed the map was wrong. Leadership in war was often imagined as loud commands, polished medals, and dramatic charges across battlefields. But sometimes leadership looked different. Sometimes it looked like humility. Sometimes it looked like listening. Sometimes it looked like a general powerful enough to let the lowest-ranking man in the room finish speaking. That was the lesson many carried home long after the guns fell silent. Rank demanded respect. Truth deserved attention. And courage was not always measured by charging toward enemy fire. Sometimes courage was quietly pointing to a map and saying, "Sir, I think this is wrong." History remembers great generals for winning battles. The soldiers who served beneath them often remembered something even greater. The moments when lives mattered more than pride. The moments when wisdom was accepted no matter whose uniform carried it. In war, those moments could change everything. What would you have done? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want more World War II stories where humanity, war, and difficult decisions collided, make sure to subscribe.